I sang. I felt at peace. The stage and the audience were enraptured in almost stunned silence. It only took 1 second for my night at the opera to turn into a nightmare. I should have noticed, but I've always been more of a performer than a fighter. All I saw were breaths taken away and stars shooting across the audience's eyes. Figures beyond the stage moved toward it, and in my head, I was vain enough to think that it was because of my voice. Luring them in, the same way we used to lure sailors to their deaths. That morning, I woke up with a heightened feeling of anxiety. I decided it was the regular case of stage fright and to ignore it. I really shouldn't have ignored my instincts. Something was wrong. The sea was calling me, and it hardly ever did these days. But the promise of applause kept me on my route. When the old woman next door called out to me, wishing me luck, I only grinned and waved. Raising my voice in such an open public space could be an issue. I sensed them, the trackers. I hastened my stride. I had been so comfortable here for so long, but knew that one day they'd find me. They'd hone in on my position the moment I sang. Yet still, I felt compelled to sing that night. I couldn't live without their applause absorbing it into my soul. Here, I was revered, unlike underwater where my voice was commonplace. Here, I had them all under my thumb. Beautiful creatures, the women and the men. Although, as with everything, attention came in positives and negatives. Lately, I've felt a foreboding loneliness within me that took more and more to fill. And so I used my abilities that night at the opera at the risk of discovery by surface dwellers who want to rip my voice out of my throat and use it for their own agenda. Majority of humans still thought of us as myths, but there were a handful who found the truth. A smaller, deadlier section of that handful figured out how to harness our abilities for unsavory goals. What I didn't know, didn't expect, was that they'd also take the voices of everyone else inside. I had taken precautions before my performance to ensure I had a chance to escape. I just didn't anticipate that the surface dwellers had recruited humans for their cause, brainwashing them to put everything the dwellers' plan needed in place. When I reached the third stanza of the second chorus, the dead-eyed audience reared towards me. The stagehand, who had always been good to me in the past, pushed me off the stage. I drew in a deep breath and screamed, creating a shockwave strong enough to push the audience backward and rip part of the carpet off. I ran. A man's sonorous voice from the shadows commanded them to hold me down. My throat ached as I heard myself singing without opening my mouth. The sound tugged me backward, but I pushed on. I shouldered through the back door, the smell of the sea hitting me like a wall. I wondered if my time in life was over and the sea was calling me home. How long if I escaped into the waters before I could come back to sunshine and dancing? Still, I knew the only way I could keep my voice was to dive back into the sea. I stood on the rampart. People burst through the door as a bullet whizzed past my shoulder. I jumped.